looking online, no problem since you guys came back. How long is this last Thursday? I was looking at it past. Yes, please. Oh, that's why. My credit card got somehow my credit card never got compromised. I had like 7 different cancel it, and I totally thought I had called you guys, but clearly I have not. So I'll be in today for a class at 10 o'clock. So can I just pay when I get there? Sure. I don't have my new card yet because it would take us a couple weeks, but you just put it on my other card. It's totally fine. Okay. It'll stay there. Okay. So can I just pay with it when I come in today, and then when I get the new card, I'll phone in with the new number? Okay. Are you able to put me into one right now? Because last I checked, we only had 2 spots left, and I don't want to lose out just because I haven't sorted this out yet. 13 kilometers. Yes. Okay, perfect. And then when I pay today, I can book my other stuff. They went to full, so. Perfect. Thank you, Montana. Okay. just whenever you're talking about the rush. Can you just process a refund for this book?
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
I'm just saying. That's what I just said. Whatever.
Did you send the other one? Yeah, we did send the other one.
Yes, but this is the proper one. But I got it from the library in the meantime while I was waiting. So I'm just going to read the free one from the library. I've already started. Oh, did you realize it's giving out?
I wanted to give him a second. I don't know how long.
It's been processed.
Oh, you got the refund?
I got an email saying that the payment was the refund was processed. Yes.
Okay. ZYN. Lost. Of course, up there. Wow. Stop texting me. You're already in. just get started here. All right, good morning, everybody. The first part will mainly consist of just checking if everyone's in the right place, if everyone can hear me, all those things. So in the main classroom chat, can I just get confirmation that some of you can indeed hear me? Perfect. All right, thank you. So we won't jump right in. I just have a couple of people that just messaged me now that I should just quickly check. Oh, come on. So that they can get in as well. Let me just check my settings quickly.
Oh, that's why I'm here. Oh,
So next to my name, you should see the live in red, and that is the screen that I'm sharing. You can also alternatively watch the screen on YouTube. There is just a couple of seconds delay between when I'm saying something and when it will show on YouTube, which is quite normal apparently. Just let me just check someone here. Okay, she's already in. One more person to check. Linda's already in, not in the room yet. Okay, all right. So the idea here is to have as close to an actual classroom as possible, meaning that it's a conversation where I speak and you speak, and feel free to interrupt me as you have questions or comments or anything. Most people feel hesitant to speak up in this audio chat room because they feel they're going to interrupt me or something. But that's how it's going to work. So don't worry about interrupting me because you can't see. We can't see each other. You can't raise your hand. You just jump in and start speaking, and we'll get used to that. For those that are less comfortable, you can use the main classroom chat to communicate and ask your questions, but I will always give priority to questions that are done verbally that we can all hear, because that is the main idea. But whatever you feel comfortable with. So let me just run through the main idea for these sessions. Um, the idea is, if we look at the website briefly, the main idea, let me scroll down a second here. If we go to course material, you have your link to the textbook that I shouldn't call it textbook. It's just a collection of notes that have been typed up that uh, works with the YouTube videos. Uh, and together they give you a way to work through the material and the concepts and see examples that are discussed and so on. So they sort of go together. The exercises, which are examples in the book, are only answered on the videos. to make the book a manageable length. So the idea is that you work your way through the book and or videos in preparation for these question and answer sessions according to the schedule a little further down in the course material section over there. So for example, today assumes that you've already worked through chapter 1 and chapter 2 up to and including section 2.1. And then in the 9 o'clock session, you can bring your questions. We can discuss issues that may have come up as you looked into those topics. And in this way, I've spread it out in a way that should get us to the end of the 4 weeks, but it doesn't mean that you have to uh, completely stick to this schedule and not be allowed any other questions. As we go, if we're on July 7th, where the idea is to talk about chapter 6, if you still have a question on chapter 2 and no one else has other questions, then we can, of course, talk about those things as well. So it's just a guide to get us to pace this in a reasonable way to get us to the end. Now, the Monday, July 13th session will just be our test day. We won't have an actual Q&A session on that day. And to get everything sort of paced nicely, we do have our last test day on Friday, July 24th. If we use the Thursday, then it doesn't give us a lot of time to really resolve any questions we might have. So we are going to meet, for those that have questions, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday in general for the next few weeks, with the exception of the very last Friday being a test day as well. So make sure that is a part of your schedule. Does anyone have any questions on how the general day will go? What you have to do in preparation, what's happening in the sessions, any questions at all. You can test if your audio works. You can just say hello. You can do whatever you want. The first part of this first session is just to see if everything works, if everyone is happy with Discord. Any questions? I'll give you a second while I'm just checking on a couple of private messages for people that might not have permission to get into the chat yet. Just trying to find this one person. Oh, she has the same name. Okay. Okay, there you go. That's one. Linda's already in as well. What will we do on July 3rd? What is July 3rd? July 3rd is a Friday. I will do nothing. You can use Friday however you want. July 3rd, July 3rd. We only have our sessions, with the exception of the very last July 24th, Friday, test. We have our sessions Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. July 3rd is a Friday, so that is for you to use however you want.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? As we talk about actual math related things, if you have questions about the flow of things and what's expected, then feel free to ask those at any time as well. I really don't want, ideally, to this to be a monologue where I'm just speaking to myself, it feels. It really, we get the most out of it if it's a conversation. Uh, but that is ultimately up to you. In a class, imagine a classroom setting, right? You would, well, for the most part, you would be quite willing to raise your hand, speak up, say hi, because we get the most out of it when it's a back and forth conversation.
Hi, Professor.
And
Uh,
hello.
Hi, this is Sandeep. I have a question. Would we be able to download your video or watch your like live streaming afterwards?
Yes, so these are being recorded as well, just
Okay.
in case. And they are going to be at the end of the YouTube playlist. I can't really show the YouTube playlist while I record, but if you go to the Math Cats YouTube, there's a playlist, Elementary Education 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you'll see inductive reasoning, and those are the first videos according to the book. Um, then at the very end, I think the last video is more word problems or something like that. I'll put these videos at the end of that with the date in the title, so you know which one, in case you want to rewatch something.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have classes every 3 weeks. No, no, we have classes for the next 4 weeks, unless I counted way off. This is the week of the 29th, one. Week of the 6th is the second week. Then we have the week of the 13th, and then we have the week of the 20th. So it's 4 weeks, but it's more spread out. Normally it is 4 days a week, and then it's really crammed in. So this one they've made 3 days a week, but one more week, giving us a little more time to watch videos and read the book and think about things. Now, I will say in between sessions, in between these 9 o'clock sessions, if you have a question, Discord is always open. There is a channel, a text chat channel, the General Math 190 SU, that is just for us. You can chat with each other. You can ask me questions. Just make sure you tag me in the questions. You can private message. You can send an email uh, for little questions, just so you know what you're supposed to be doing is what you are doing. Uh, but main questions we can, of course, address in these sessions as well. But if you have little questions that can be resolved through any sort of text, you can do it by email. What's nice about Discord versus something like Zoom is this is always open. If you want to talk to another student, you guys can go into the classroom, the voice chat. You can chat with each other. You can text each other through the text channel. It's always open. It's not a session that I open and then I close it again. Discord is always open for you to use and communicate. We are a little community trying to all support each other and successfully get through the course. So it's a little bit more effective in that way, which is why I like uh, Discord ahead of other similar apps. Any other questions?
Good morning, Mr. Benick. This is Prajakta.
Good morning.
I had a question about the assignments that we have to submit, the 4 assignments.
Yes, let's go there. Whoopsie, whoopsie. What am I doing? There we go. Portfolio assignments. Yes.
Yes. So I would want to know what is the study pattern for the assignments? Do we wait for you to complete a topic to be able to approach the assignments? And roughly by what date do you expect each assignment to be sent to you?
Yeah, so the idea with the assignments mainly is to just see what is actually happening inside, not inside a classroom, but what is happening specifically in a grade you might be teaching, so 1 to 7, more or less,
Okay.
to see specific worksheets, but just an example of each. Now, some of them, if you look at it, some of them are quite easy, and some
Yes.
of them you might feel, for example, on fractions, you might feel, ooh, maybe I'll wait for our chapter on fractions, have that discussion first, bef- and then I'll feel better about the worksheet. So it really depends on you. I
Okay.
would say have a look at them if you feel confident already, and some of them are like grade one, right? They're quite straightforward.
Right.
You're welcome to do them anytime you want. If you feel uncertain about one, chances are we'll probably have a topic in our book, in our course, that is related, or we could just talk about that at any time as well. The idea is that the topics of the worksheets, as close as I can, they resemble the four parts that our course content is broken up into as well. So, for example, a worksheet on fractions will appear in the last portfolio assignment because we have our fraction topic in part 4.
Okay.
But it's not a question, it's not for all of them a question of I they mirror what's happening in the book exactly. Sometimes more than other times. Sometimes, especially in part 1, of the book, we are more developing our own critical thinking, our own logical reasoning skills, and that translates to actual teaching in a more subtle, indirect way. So you're not
Right.
going to see a worksheet in grade whatever on inductive reasoning. That's not directly something we'll teach. It's more indirectly a skill that I use in thinking about problems. So some worksheets are more direct. You'll see like fractions or like a little word problem or maybe factors and something like that. Some worksheets are more indirectly related to what we do in the class, but it's just there to have us be aware because we sort of have two goals, and I sometimes forget the second goal. One goal is to improve ourselves and our own thinking skills and mathematical skills in line with grades 1 to 7, but sometimes we have to know a little bit more. Sometimes we talk about exactly what we'll be teaching, but we also want to think about the actual teaching side of things. It's one thing to be able to solve a problem. It's sometimes a completely different thing to be able to explain how to solve a problem in a way that passes on that knowledge, and then the student can solve problems that are similar. Teaching isn't quite the same as knowing, so we also want to be aware of what are we teaching one day? What is going to happen in our classroom? Sometimes what we're learning isn't exactly the same as what we'll be teaching, and sometimes it is, but we always want to think of those two things. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes, like part 1, they don't feel like they're overlapping um, quite as much, but they're always beneficial in some way. Whereas if I were to teach a calculus class, then I'm not talking about teaching or explaining as much. You just have to know how to do the problem. But we have an extra goal of always thinking about how would I teach this? How would I effectively transfer this information to someone else? And that makes it sometimes a little bit more difficult.
Right.
So the worksheets are there to just remind us what is actually happening in our jobs one day and how does it relate. Sometimes obvious, sometimes a little less obvious. That's a very long answer, but so
I have
to sum up,
one more
you can do
question
them
though.
anytime you want. You can do
Okay.
them today and finish them. You can do them all at the end. It really doesn't matter.
Right. I had another question. I read somewhere that when we send you the assignments, we need to also mention our registered number and our student number. I do not know what the registered number is.
I don't know
I know
either
my
what that
student
is.
number.
I only
Okay.
know a student number.
So
So
only
that's,
the student
yeah,
number would be.
I don't even know any other number. So student number
Okay.
is perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Um, yeah, I'm just looking through the description on the website here. You have 4 assignments. And I mean, yes, it sounds like a lot, but it's like little worksheets. Some of them are very straightforward. And I mean, the portfolio assignment, while I'm thinking of this, also asks a question. It asks, if you're going to be a teacher one day, you need to be very confident in the actual content the students will be doing. So you could also see the portfolio assignments as a little test. If I give you a random grade 4 worksheet, can you do that with confidence? The answer should be yes. And if the answer is no, then at least I want to know now. Like, ooh, fractions, I'm not that confident. Let's address this before I step into a classroom. Now, you might have the comeback that I've heard before, like, I don't need to know fractions. I'm going to be teaching kindergarten. I'm good. But you don't necessarily know which grade you're going to be in front of. And we have to be confident, at the very least, in doing that material. Then we'll worry about teaching it and what do we need to know to help us come at the question from different sides, depending on the student's needs and so on. But at the very least, the portfolio assignment is a test. Can I do actual grade 4 content? And the answer should definitely be yes. So just in case people do the portfolio assignments after everything is done, I have a deadline there for them of Sunday the 26th. So the weekend after we are done, you can still work on the portfolio assignments, and then early that next week I'll finalize the grades and so on. Let me just check the chat here. Do we need to answer textbook questions and send them in? They are just for learning. They're just for learning. So in the book, let's go to a book example. Let's go over here. So in the book, you'll see there are exercises. Those are discussed in the videos. They have answers in the videos. And if any of those don't make sense, we could certainly do them as well. Um, just make sure you are, to avoid background noise, you are either using push to talk or mute your microphone. I'm gonna have to do it for him. I think it's a him. As much fun as it is to hear microwave noises, uh, it's a little distracting sometimes. So we have exercises. Those are like in-class examples that, for the most part, there might be one or two missing, and then we could fill it in. Um, those are discussed in the video. The video you'll see for the most part. I am slowly updating them, but many of them are recordings of an actual class. Then we have problems. Those are just extra questions for you to do as you need to. You don't hand them in. You, I don't check that you've done them all. You use them as you want to use them. They have some short answers on the website. Let me show you that. Over here under course material, right above portfolio assignment, broken up into chapters. Now, those aren't something that is necessarily used for teaching the answer. That's what the exercises and the videos are for. They're sometimes just there to confirm, oh, I want to know if I got the right answer. I just quickly check, is this the right answer? It's not um, written out in a way that can teach you the concept. So use the problem answers sparingly. I would try to avoid them. But if you're really curious, oh, I want to know if I got the right answer, then they are there for that reason. But they're not there to learn how to do the questions. For that, we'll have to discuss um, in these sessions. That's what these sessions are there for. So any of the problems or anything like that, we can certainly discuss. But they do have short answers just written out on the website. But the only thing you have to do, the only thing that affects your grade will be the tests that are called quizzes, about an hour for each part, and then the portfolio assignments. The videos on YouTube are in the Math for Elementary Education 1. Yes, and you'll see the titles of the videos, they match the headings in the book. Oh, I see. My polar bear has disappeared. That's not very polite. He had enough. He's out. Oh well. Any other questions? The session, for the most part, we still have an hour to go. It's you asking your questions. I can't guess what your questions are. You have to actually ask them. Let me go to the table of contents here. Where is it now? Oops, we're not doing fractions. Just like in a classroom. Think about how would you act in a classroom? What would you do in a sort of an open session? If you have a question, you raise your hand and you ask. There's just no hand raising, you just start speaking.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Uh, I want to know the assignments. The assignment questions we need. Uh, if we finish that, we send it to your email address
Yes.
or okay.
No, it's just simpler. I used to have an upload system, and then some people got confused, and in the end, they just email it anyway. So email is fine. Uh, I would prefer to have each portfolio assignment as a separate PDF, just
Okay.
so I can make sure I don't. Sometimes when like assignment 1 and 2 is one document, then I sometimes miss that there's a second one and I think you didn't submit it. So it's just better to submit them as separate files, but it can just be in an email, yeah, just an
Okay.
attachment.
So
And then if I don't reply saying I received it, then you can just double check or send it again. I'll reply to all of them.
okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I know not everyone has necessarily prepared for this first section because they didn't session, I mean, because they didn't necessarily know how it's going to go. So just so you know, if we go to the pacing table, the chapters and sections that are listed under course material is what we ideally should be talking about and questions you might have, which means you need to work through the book and the videos on that beforehand. And you can just match the titles of the sections to the videos. It'll be very easy to see which is which. So for today, the ideal was that you have already worked through chapters 1 and section 2.1. And if not, if you have to catch up, that's fine. The spacing schedule is just an idea to get us to the end. You can definitely do more or less as you need to. And then for tomorrow's session, we want to ideally be caught up with everything up to chapters 1 and 2, which is a lot. And it's a lot to do, which is why 3 days a week might be a little better. But I can give you an overview if, unless someone has questions, I can give you an overview of what we're doing in chapter 1 at least. Chapter 1 is very much an introduction chapter. but feel free to interrupt me with actual questions if you have already, um, if you have some questions already. So you'll see here, if we look at the table of contents here, we have our first chapter on logical reasoning. It is an introduction to a large degree, especially section 1.1. There are different kinds of reasoning that one can use. They have pros and cons. Some are flawed, some are not flawed, but they aren't perfect. We have someone saying they can't see my screen. Can anyone confirm or deny that my screen is working? Okay, no, it does seem to be working. Sometimes just close the screen sharing and then exit and come back in. You also have the option to watch everything on YouTube. Let me just triple check that everything is indeed being shared on YouTube. Yes, it is being streamed to YouTube as well. So you always have that option. It looks a little nicer on YouTube. The downside is that there is a 1 to 2 second delay, which isn't that much because we're not speaking that fast. So if anything happens or you don't love Discord or something's not right, um, be aware that you can watch the same thing, a little better actually, a little more production to it on YouTube as a live stream as well. I just want to double check. We have a couple of messages here. Linda. Linda's already in. Okay, so day one, there's always a little issues. Even though I sent the email last week, people don't know to go in and get the permissions because we don't have a login into Discord. How it works is if you don't have the student role, that's sort of your login. You won't be able to get into this classroom. So a random person can't just come in and say hi and troll us.
Hi,
You need to
Professor.
verify. Yes,
I have a question. Should we consider this book as a base for our test or quiz?
yes. The quiz questions in the
Mhm.
tests will very much resemble exercises and problems from the book. They won't deviate from that level of question. Now, of course, they won't be exactly the same, but for I want to say all of them. Yeah, for all of the questions in a test, you should be able to find a problem or exercise that is very close. And then you can look, okay, how did we do that one? Do I understand that? And then use that strategy or method and apply it to the test question. So it's very directly related to what we are doing. Now, I will say, while I'm thinking of it, the tests are in this format open book tests, which means you can use any resource that is not a person. You can't have your friend tell you the answer off. Well, there's no screen. And
Mhm.
then you write the answer. But any book or anything you want to use, you're welcome to use it. Uh, YouTube videos, whatever you want to do. Um, but still, you'll see that the test questions are not going to, you'll never find a test question and say, well, I've never seen this before in my life. I had no idea this was coming. For every test question, I can point to a problem or exercise and say that it was very similar. So understanding the exercises and the problems will give you a very, very good idea of what could come in the test. You just don't know which one, of course.
And thank you. Can we get any sample for quiz?
Um, there are no samples because it's
Okay.
already too easy, to be honest. It's if they find out, it's already too easy because it's open book. So your main challenge when you see a test question is, where have I seen this kind of question before? And then you can just open your book, open the video, your notes or whatever, and go and find it. If it was a closed book test, then I can understand the benefit
Requirement
of,
of the sample.
yeah,
Yeah.
but because you already have all the sample questions, right? You have them in
Mhm.
front of you. It feels a little too easy if I give you more. Our whole book of exercises and problems, those are the sample questions because any one of them could be a test question.
Yeah, if it's open book, then it should be good.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, for this course, having it be open book is uh, making
Much
it a little
more.
bit too easy, a little bit. But something has to, some benefit has to come from
Yeah,
the
but
whole
that's
COVID
good for us.
situation. We have to benefit sometimes.
That's good for us.
But yeah, I mean, we don't have there's enough time for sure in a test, but certainly if for example you didn't do chapter 1 at all, you skipped the
Mhm,
book, you skipped the videos, you didn't bother doing anything,
mhm.
then there isn't that much time to get the test question. Now go and look for something. There's no time for that. So you still have to do some preparation. But if you've prepared by following and understanding what we've been doing, then the test really is not a big challenge. Nor should it be, really. It's there to ask, did you acquire some knowledge according to the topics we discussed? Do you have a basic understanding of the concepts? If you do, then you should do well in the test. So it's very much in line with what it should be. But the upside of that is that if you do follow what we're doing and understand it, then there is no reason to not do very well because it's
And
that basic. Yeah.
thank you. And I have a question about chapter second.
Whoa, sorry, you're gonna have to repeat it. As soon as you asked, something got broken up in the audio.
Okay. I have a question about. Hello.
I don't think your device wants you to ask that question.
Oh my God.
If you just
Can
speak,
you
it's
hear me now?
fine. That's better. That's better. Try again.
Okay. So in chapter two, logical puzzles, introduction section, this exercise 2.1.
Okay, well, slow down, slow down. Exercise 2.1, I heard. Someone doesn't want you to ask that question.
You mentioned that in your video.
Oh, let me go to exercise 2.1. Hold on. 2.1. Okay, hold on. What page is that on? Whoa, I'm too far. I'm too far.
Yeah, the one.
Exercise
Uh, the
2.1.
beginning, the beginning.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. Okay, that
yeah.
that one is,
Three people pay
yes, that one is not a test question.
$30.
That one is, there are so few of these questions, these little puzzles that mess with us, that I wanted to put this one in the book without really giving it an answer because it, let me say, it's not a test question. It's a question that illustrates how confusing things can be based on how it's phrased. That if you, let's read it, for example, because not everyone has. So we have three people. They pay $30 to stay at a hotel. Each person contributes 10. So they go to their rooms. The hotel manager sends a bellboy to return $5 as a discount. So, but on the way, the bellboy decides to give each person $1 and keep 2 for himself as commission. So now each person got $1 back. So that means they only paid $9 for the hotel room. And with the $2 that the bellboy has, that gets us to 9 times 3 is 27, plus 2 is 29. Where's the missing dollar? So these kinds of questions are designed to be confusing. They're phrased in a way to distract us from what's happening. Because logically, there can't be a dollar just disappearing. But the way the question is phrased distracts you and leads you, if you read it fast, it sort of strings you along until the last sentence, and then, oh, wait, there is a dollar missing? How can that be? So it's designed to be confusing. So I'll let you think about it. It's just for fun. But the important lesson to take from this is that how we say things and what we're saying in each sentence as an explanation or a solution or whatever is very important because it can very easily be not quite
Manipulate.
what we want to say. We have to make sure, especially in part one, the whole point, well, not the whole point, but a big portion of the logical reasoning and as a topic for us is to carefully understand what we want to say and then exactly say what we want to say and not say it in a way that's convoluted, that has multiple interpretations, and those things are confusing, especially if I sit in front of a student that's not quite understanding how to solve a problem. Let's say it's slightly more complicated. How I say things need to be exactly right so that they don't misinterpret what I'm saying, so that I say exactly what I mean to say, and sort of by one sentence at a time lead them to where I want them to be. And it's very easy to just casually speak, and then it's easy to get confused uh, when we just casually say things without carefully thinking what we're saying and possible different interpretations. We don't want things like that in a logical topic like math. But the exercise 2.1 is just for fun. I don't want to ruin it. And you'll find even if you have an understanding, like obviously there can't be a dollar missing. How do I explain this to someone? Because the way this question is phrased, the whole story, it leads you and it's trying to convince you that there is a dollar missing, which obviously is impossible. I have found people that I tell this story to, or that they read this story, that I cannot convince them that there is no dollar missing. They're convinced, yet it's impossible. And it just shows me how tricky um, conveying information can be, how tricky it is to convince someone else uh, that an argument is true or an argument leads to a correct conclusion. Even in the topic of logical reasoning, where it's true or it's not, there is no in between. Even that topic is sometimes it's very difficult to effectively convey the concept to someone else. And it's all a matter of how we say things and the order in which we say or we arrange our sentences. It's not easy. Now, to be fair, our topic doesn't go into a lot of complexity. We try and keep things as simple as possible with basic statements uh, by way of practicing this negation concept. And then as we move over to our puzzles, we're using those same things. Maybe we're not writing them all down, but when you solve a puzzle like this, now I know this is for tomorrow, when you solve a puzzle like this, even though you might just be saying it, you might not be writing everything down because it's time consuming if you write everything down. Whenever I go through the argument of how I solved this puzzle, I need to be very clear of every step why I'm doing something. How can I fill in this box? And if I can't, then I should be doing something else. There's no maybe I can write this over here. Maybe I could do that. Let's just go with that. No, everything has to be precise and clear, and you have to have an explanation for every step that you're doing so that someone else can follow if it's a teaching situation. So as we go through these things, and I mean that should have been said in the video as well. I don't remember the videos word for word, but I'm sure I said in the video that exercise 2.1 is just for fun, just to get us to be aware that how things are said can actually be very confusing. And our goal to a large degree is to avoid confusion, And that's not easy to do. That just it takes time and experience.
Hi, I just wanted some clarity on the concept, the definition of negation. So I understand the definition,
Yes.
but I just want us, if you could talk about the exercise 2.2 here, which says state the negation of the following statements.
Yeah.
My understanding is that I just negate the statement. So if it says this book has 500 pages, I would say this book does not have 500 pages.
Yes, those are the easy ones. When it's very, I'll say specific, it's one book, it's talking about a property of one thing, then it's the direct opposite. But when we look at numbers 2, 3, and 4,
Mhm.
where it's talking about a number of students,
Right.
a number of people having a property, a number of people in class having a calculator property, then those are the ones that become a little bit more complicated in comparison to number one. So I find a diagram very helpful, 2.2. If we look at the first one, for example, where is it now? Over here. I zoom in on this. I should be zooming. There we go. So all students like hamburgers. Okay, so now I have a property that I like to write on the left here. The property that I'm investigating or making a statement about is liking burgers. So I write that next to sort of at the on the side so I remember what I'm referring to here. Then I have my line of all possibilities in terms of people having this property. No people could have the property, one person, maybe two people, all the way to absolutely everyone could be liking hamburgers. Now, I don't look at this as a practical situation. I look at all possibilities, regardless of what could actually be happening. In truth, most things are a mix. In truth, I would get something in between. But if I ignore any practicality, anything on this line is uh, is possible. No people, a mix of people liking and not liking, up to all people liking hamburgers. Now, the given statement, I'll write it over here. Given statement, we'll do in black. We have it over there. I'm not going to copy it. Says all students like. So that puts me, the given statement is true only on this right extreme situation. So only when the black dot is what's actually happening, then the given statement will be true. If there's a mix of people liking and not liking, the given statement is false because the given statement says all students like hamburgers. So as soon as I step away from this dot, the given statement is not true. So the given statement is true only for that position on the line. So if I change my color to something else. Let's go pink. What is not covered by this black dot? Everything in the middle as well as the left extreme. So the negation is just a fancy word for the opposite statement. So the opposite statement now has to be phrased in such a way so that it's true whenever the given one is not. Meaning it should be true whenever I get a situation that's pink, something in the
Right.
middle or something on the left. Together they cover all possibilities. So now I have to phrase the negation to cover all of the pink. So I could say, yes, I could say, just put a not in front in this case. Not all students like burgers. It just doesn't always, it's not always going to sound right by just putting a not in front of everything. Uh, so yeah, it's technically correct. And in this case, it's a sentence that sounds right. But I could also say, at least one student does not like burgers. Because as soon as I have one person, so at least one means one or more, as soon as I have one person not liking, that means I'm away from the all situation and I'm in the pink. Now, I say at least one because it doesn't have to be just one. It could be two people, then I'm over here. It could be three people. And the more people not liking, the further I drift away from the all. And if absolutely everyone does not like it, then I'm over here. And no people like it. So it's a little bit um, safer, I guess, to sort of think about moving away from the given statement and then what would be required to get me into the pink. I require one or more students not liking burgers. Then I'm in the pink area. But visualizing it with a line ranging from none to all helps a lot. Without this diagram, oops, without the
Right. But
diagram, now it's much more difficult to visualize how do I go from the given statement to the negation. But if I see the diagram, then I understand it gives me something to work with.
so, by this, the example 3, which says some people like mathematics.
Yeah, so now there's variety in the given statement,
Right.
and that changes my diagram. So if I go to that one, this was number one. No, this was not number one, number two. Let's go back to black first. Was that number three? So now my property is liking math. Now later, for the more complicated ones, it helps me to write down this property. And I've seen multiple times if people don't write the property, there are some examples where it could mess me up. So I remind myself, what am I talking about? Oh, liking math. Okay. Well, the people liking math will range from none to all. So this is my setup. Now I look at the given statement and when that is true. And they say some people like math. Now, some, when I speak casually in conversation, the word some can have different meanings. And that can get me into trouble in a situation where I want to be precise in saying what I mean to say. Words like some are not ideal words. I either have to never use them or I have to very clearly have an agreement on what they mean. So here they're used, so we have to make an agreement on what that word means exactly. And for our purposes, it's going to mean the same as one or more, or at least one. It's going to mean the same thing. So let me just write that down. Oops, what am I pressing here? Stop. So I'll say here. Hold on, I lost my pen. Where's my pen? Where is my pen? Where did my pen go? Oh, I was white. That's why. Okay. There we are. Okay, we're back. So we'll say here that the concept conveyed by the word some is the same as at least one. We have to make that agreement because if I pay attention to how we just casually speak, some can be used in different contexts. Now, it's not a danger there because it's a conversation and someone can ask me, oh, what do you mean by some? And then I can elaborate and eventually everyone understands. Totally fine. But on paper, there's no conversation, so I have to know exactly. Okay, so the given statement is true when some people like math. So that means one person could like math, that's some, or two, or three, or four. Some people like math. The issue is, should I include all? When it's the situation where all people like math, is the given statement true? When it says some people like math? That is my first question. I'm trying to see, right? I need to color in all the parts on this line where the given statement is true. None, middle, all. So the middle for sure, but should all be included in the given statement? Given statement says some people like math. What would you say?
Well, I think all becomes an extreme, doesn't it?
All is an extreme. The question, yes. The question is, should I include it? Meaning, if I look in the world and absolutely everyone likes math, so this is what's actually happening, all. Is the given statement true?
I
Given
don't think
statement says,
Yes.
given statement says, some people like math.
so. Yeah.
Given
I don't
statement,
think all will be included in some.
that
Yes,
is the
everyone.
issue.
Everyone will be included.
See, some people say yes, some people say no, because intuitively the some word has different meanings. But now let me ask you this. So imagine a room. Now we would have a classroom that I would use. Imagine you're in a classroom. You're teaching, you have a classroom full of kids. And it's Halloween. Absolutely everyone is wearing an orange shirt. You too, everyone. You only see
Mm.
orange shirts everywhere on that day. You step outside and you tell your colleague, some kids are wearing orange shirts today. Is that true or false?
That is true
It's
because
true.
now I'm looking at a bigger picture,
Yeah,
right?
obviously it's true.
Also,
It just so happens that absolutely everyone wears orange. Your statement saying that some kids wear orange, that's still true. So some, the concept of some, does not exclude the extreme case of all. It
okay,
includes it.
okay.
So, but it's important to talk about those things, right? It's things we never really think about. Now we have to start thinking because when I want to convey a concept, I need to be very clear that what I'm saying is what I mean. Okay, so now all this black squiggly, including the right extreme, is covered by the given statement because of what the given statement is. And it's a little easier to think of at least one because at least one means one or more. That goes all the way up to everything. Now, the only thing not covered by this or by the given statement is the left extreme, the none. Is the only thing that's not black and squiggly. So when I phrase my negation, it has to be phrased in such a way that it covers all of the pink and only the pink.
Mhm.
In this case, the pink is very simple. So I say no, was it students? People. No people or no one or whatever version you want. No people like math. You have some variation of how you want to phrase it, but it's the none that is the key. Now, before, we had a different given statement, therefore a different coverage of the line. Therefore, our pink area was different, and so we had to adjust our phrasing to match the diagram. But the diagram, I think, helps a lot to the point where I don't want to do it without a diagram ever again.
This helps a lot to understand that concept. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
visualizing, I underestimate it. And I see it in kids too. With, excuse me, where they have a word problem. It's not even a hard word problem, but for them, it's new. Word problems are always challenging. Um, but it's not intuitively obvious how much starting with a picture is going to help you. And then if I get them to just draw a picture or draw a couple of pictures, even if it's very simple and seems unnecessary, it just opens up the answer immediately. Just
Excuse me.
visualizing. That's how we work. Yes.
I want to know, will you upload this PDF document uh, to our dashboard or not?
What PDF document?
Like what uh, are the notes that you write down now?
Oh, what I'm writing on the screen?
Yeah.
No, but the video, everything that you're seeing on the screen is being recorded and will be at the end of our YouTube playlist.
In the YouTube playlist.
So when you
Yeah.
go and watch the videos, our playlist is Math for Elementary Education 1.
Okay. So we
And you'll
just
see it'll start with inductive reasoning and some other stuff.
okay.
At the very end of that playlist, I'll put this video. Of course, it won't be there right now, but
Okay.
as soon
Understand.
as we're done,
Understand.
I'll attach it at the end. Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
And then you'll see this on the screen. There's no need for a PDF. You
Okay.
can write it down and
Thank you.
pause and whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Professor, I was just wondering if you could go over a question on page 25 on problem 2.3, number 5.
Yes,
On page 25.
I'm just trying to match. Oh, problem. Right. Wow, I'm confused. 2.3,
Yeah,
number 5. Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
is that the one that doesn't have an answer?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew there was one. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5. Yeah, problem 2.3. So now we're jumping a little bit. We're done with, can I zoom in? I want to zoom in a little more. I think that works. So now we're technically done with negation. We've drawn our little line. We've practiced the phrasing. And problem 2.3, which has exercises as well, is the other kind of um, question really in that section, where we're given an argument with 3 statements just in case some people haven't looked at this yet. So I just want to sort of give them an idea of where we're at. We're given an argument with three statements, and we want to determine if it's a logically sound argument, if it's a valid argument. Now, the way we're going to do that is we want to assess the conclusion part, which is the last statement. The question is, for it to be a logically sound argument, we need to have the third statement 100% follow from the first two. So the first two are setting things up. The question is, does that third statement necessarily follow from the first two? Only then is it logically sound. It has to be 100%. There cannot be any other option. Okay. And again, just like before, I'm going to visualize and help myself with a diagram. I'll make a new page. The diagram will be different because it's a different kind of question. This way. So in this case, let me just highlight this. We're doing problem 2.3. This is number 5. Okay, so I'm going to group people. The people are essentially all people are on my page here. Some of them are going to have the doctor property, and some of them will not. So I will make a circle or a circular shape, and that will be my doctors. Some people, the people inside are doctors, outside not doctors. Then I also have other kind of people, intelligent people. And the first statement says some doctors are intelligent. Not all of them necessarily, some of them. So in a sum statement, I have to overlap the two circles like that. So some doctors, maybe this guy over there he is also intelligent. But some might not be. And therefore I only have an overlap. So I am restricted by the first two statements. The first statement tells me this has to be the layout of doctors versus intelligent people. They have to overlap. I'm stuck with that. Then there is the next statement. All intelligent people are poets. That's a different kind of statement. It says all intelligent people. So whenever I get an intelligent person, that person has to be a poet as well. So I have another circle, the circle of poets, and all the intelligent people have to be inside the poet circle. So I could draw the poet circle in two ways. I could draw it like this. That would certainly make the second statement true. All intelligent people are necessarily poets. All intelligent people are poets. But that's not the only way it could happen. It could also be like that. Now, because there's a combination of two statements, there are options where both the first two statements are true, but I don't know exactly the layout. I want to know, regardless of the options, does the third statement necessarily follow? Is it 100% certain that I'm going to get the third statement? And the third statement says, therefore, some doctors are poets. Meaning I don't need all doctors to be poets. could happen. I just need a doctor to overlap with the poet circle. So in this case, there's a doctor that overlaps with the poet circle. In fact, all of them overlap with the poet circle. So some doctors certainly are poets. I made too many dots.
Thank you. That makes sense now.
I'll just finish it anyway. And even in the other option, whoa, that's not right. That's not what I want to do. This one is what I want to do. Where this is my poet circle, I still have, because doctors are sort of attached to intelligent people, I will always have a doctor that is also going to be a poet because the whole intelligent circle is inside poets. So, regardless of my options, the third statement is definitely true in every case. I cannot find a layout that makes the first two statements true, but not the third one. The third one is always there. So I then have to conclude, yes, it is logically sound. The third statement always follows from the first two. It's a sound argument. But in this case as well, I let a diagram help me
Uh,
visualize what's happening. Yes.
I had a question. How about if we make the poet circle inside the intelligence circle as a separate circle? What happens then? Is that not a valid diagram then?
Hold on, let me go back first. Back. There we go. So we're over here. So you want to put the poet circle inside.
Yes. That would make all
Very small
poets
poet.
intelligent.
The problem is the second statement is not true anymore. So I'm not looking at the correct
Yes,
build-up, and I can't assess the third statement. The second statement says all intelligent people are poets.
right.
But that's not true. There's an intelligent person right there.
Right. I get it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in another situation, yeah, that could be my diagram. But I
Mhm,
can't assess if the third statement is correct or not if I don't have the right build-up, which is
mhm,
why I'm stuck with the first two sentences telling me what my layout has to be within
right.
reason. And within that framework, is the third statement necessarily true? So I have to set up that framework first. However, I have only two kinds. We're going to make this very simple, right? In truth, this could be way more complicated with more statements, more variety in the kinds of statements, and so on. We are just getting the idea. So we have an all statement and we have a sum statement. And just to give us a handle, this is an introduction. Those are the only statements we're going to see. An all statement, let's say all property A are also property B. Then it's always going to have a layout A inside B. First inside second. If I say some A's are also B's, that's going to be an overlap between A and B. And now it's just a matter of which ones are given, how do they combine, and what am I looking for. But to make it manageable, we are going to stick to only two kinds of statements and only three statements. So you'll see once you look at a few of these, we always have three properties. There's always going to be three circles. In number five, it's doctors, intelligent people, and poets. In number two, for example, it's lawyers, wealthy people, and doctors. You're always going to have three circles. It's just a matter of what's my setup requiring for the layout? What options do I have? And does the third one always follow, regardless of the options? If it does, fine, it's a logically sound argument. But if there's a layout that is a valid option, but it doesn't satisfy the third statement, then that statement doesn't 100% follow, and it's not a valid argument. Just to look at the text chat, the poet circle could be exactly the same size as the intelligence circle. Then it is still true that all intelligent people are poets if they happen to be exactly the same size. I don't have the information to count that out or to say that that's the case. But regardless, because doctors overlap with intelligent people, I will necessarily have a doctor that is a poet as well. So, yeah, that's definitely a possibility as well.
So, Mr. Bannock, we can just color. We can just use a color to
Sure.
color the intelligence circle, and that would be the poet circle, right? Including the overlap.
I don't want to make too many assumptions. Yes, it's
Yeah.
possible that intelligent people and poets are the same circle, but that could get me in trouble in a different question. I want to assume as little as possible
I see. Okay.
because chances are it's very unlikely that they're the same circle, right? What's more likely is so I picture it as where was poets? Poets were outside, right?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. No, not that. Not that either. There we go. I see it as a general layout with the possibility that this little outside section could have 0 people in it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I don't want to assume that it's not there, but if I write in numbers of people, this could have 100 people and this could have 0 people. It's
Okay.
still a possibility because I don't have the information to say that that doesn't exist. But regardless, it doesn't have an impact. Uh, it doesn't have an impact. So let's say it's a different third statement. Let's change the third statement to some. Oh, that's not going to work. Okay, it's a little more complicated than you'd see in a test, but still. Some doctors are poets, but not intelligent. Let's say that was the third statement. Now I can't say that that's true anymore. That's not necessarily the case. Because even though I allow for a possible poet that's not intelligent, based on my first 2 statements, all I require is that intelligent people be inside poets. It doesn't give me any information about there being other poets. And that outside region, outside of intelligent people, could be 0, which would then mean there is nothing there. There are no doctors that are poets and not intelligent because it's possible that they're the same. I just can't assume that.
Ah, got it. Yeah.
So I have to be careful with minimizing assumptions as much as I can. But the more I do it, the better it gets. This is an okay first example, but definitely if you haven't, uh, look through the video or try the exercises and then match it to the video, whatever. It's discussed in the exercises, and then you have some problems to work on, and through those, you should get an idea. Yeah, it just takes time. Yeah, but definitely, I want to have a strategy that that helps me. I've seen, oh, I've been in classes where um, I remember a specific math class where we didn't really know what to do. We had a list of questions, homework problems we had to do. And I remember very, very clearly the professor said, don't think about it, just start writing and things will just sort of sort itself out. And even then, I remember thinking to myself, that is the worst advice you could give me. I'm not writing an essay. With math, it's different. I have to, before I write anything down, I have to make a plan. How am I going to help myself figure this out? What am I going to do? Now, the plan could be very specific or very vague, but I need to have a plan of attack. And very often, a plan is just draw a diagram. Just can I visualize what's happening here just to help me move forward? It might not be the best plan, but I need to have a plan. And in this case, having some circles and overlapping groups of people and seeing, visualizing what the statements are giving me makes a huge difference. Huge difference, visualizing. But that's not really the go to thing for kids. Their first reaction, for some reason, is not to draw a picture, which I would think it is. It's not. But it makes a huge difference once they just visualize. The question becomes more clear, and sometimes the answer is just revealed. So it's a lot of little things. Yeah, we're talking about valid arguments, but a lot of other little things that I can get from this. Like, how do I approach this problem? How can I make it easier for myself? Then another problem could be completely different, could have nothing to do with chapter 2. But I'm used to thinking first, how can I help myself better understand this and slowly work towards figuring it out? And very often a diagram is a wonderful idea. That's my little rant for the day. Draw pictures. Draw pictures. Might not look exactly like mine, but it's almost always helpful. We have a few minutes left. Are there any other questions or questions about what you need to be doing in the next day? The next day is a little short, like we're meeting tomorrow, then we have 2 days, then we have a weekend. So it varies. If you can't exactly follow that pacing, just be aware that if you're a little behind, there might be some things said in the session that could be confusing. So it's up to you. Everyone has a different schedule. But overall, the 4 week pacing should be a little bit better. I like the fact that more people are speaking. I like that. My previous class, oh, people were so reluctant to say anything, and you get more out of it if you speak
If
like
you
you would in
ask
a class.
questions.
Yeah,
Professor, you mentioned step process: stop, think, evaluate, and proceed.
yes. That's sort of the same as what I was just talking about. Before you write anything, just stop and come up with at least half a plan. Am I going to draw a picture here? Am I going to do something else? How am I going to help myself? And then I'll proceed and update it as I go. Sorry, I interrupted you. Was that your question? You didn't actually answer.
No,
Oh,
actually, it makes sense. Uh, if you can just elaborate it a little bit more, because in maths, it is necessary to think before you do something.
yeah. I don't. Writing an essay is different. In some cases, you sort of just start writing, and your thoughts sort of organize themselves in some magical way, and it works. But in math, in problem solving, it's different. I have to have a very clear idea. Do I understand the question, first of all? That could sometimes be the biggest challenge. And once I understand the question, then answering it is maybe straightforward. Uh, so that's definitely the first stopping point. Do I understand the question? Once I've passed that, I can, uh, I guess, proceed. But it's an updating process. That my first plan to solve a problem might not be complete. It might just be a starting point. It might be the wrong plan. Maybe drawing a picture is a terrible idea because the picture is too hard for me to draw or something. But I still have a plan. And then I proceed with the plan, hoping for the best, and it'll show either, ooh, this avenue it isn't gonna work. I get stuck. Then I go back and rethink, well, did I understand the question right? Do I need to update my strategy? And I keep going back. I need to reread the question. Am I still on track? Why am I doing this? Okay, let's keep going. So it's sort of a looping, you loop back over and over and over. And I see so many, actually almost everyone. Uh, we're naturally inclined to read a question and then expect it of ourselves to just write down the answer or immediately maybe a small calculation and we're done from reading it once. And some questions, yes, they're straightforward enough to do that. But any sort of word problem, anything a little bit more involved, and that's a completely unfair expectation. I still cannot read a question and confidently just write the answer down. It depends on the question. If it's a wordy question with 4 or 5 sentences in it, I'm going to have to read that a bunch of times. And I can't proceed until I understand the question. And reading it over and over is necessary. It's unfair to expect it of myself to read it once, remember all the things that were said, and now answer the question. Even though I might have the best strategy, I can't remember all of it. And I see kids do that all the time. They read a question once, they're not sure what to do, they give up. But you haven't given yourself a chance. Read the question over and over and over. It's not a matter of being embarrassed. Oh, I had to read it 5 times. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But many people feel, oh no, it's embarrassing. I had to read it 3, 4 times before I could understand what's happening. It depends on the question. If it's a longer question, then I need to scale my loop over and over and over accordingly. Whatever it takes to better understand the question, better have an idea. Another issue is people don't want to do the looping back, review what am I doing? Is this still a good idea? Should I keep going? They want to just get to the answer right away. But if we more think about not the answer, but more moving towards the answer. If I move towards the answer, it doesn't matter how fast. If I keep moving closer to the answer is going to come. I don't need to worry about the answer. I need to worry about the inching forward, moving forward, progressing to the answer. The answer is an end result that's inevitable if I move towards it. People are too obsessed with in calculations. These aren't really calculation questions, but even in the puzzles, people are too obsessed with the final answer. If I'm moving closer and closer, then the answer is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's not anything I need to worry about. I'd rather worry about my strategy, my understanding, my plan. Is it moving me forward? Doesn't matter how slow or fast it is. But that's something that requires training. Uh, and it's natural for kids to read a question, even if they understand the question. Read the question. If they're not able to answer it right away, no, that just means they're stupid or their brain doesn't work like that or it's some fault with them. But you haven't really given yourself a chance. Just move towards the answer and the answer is going to come. We don't have to worry about the answer. And once we do make that shift, things seem much more possible. Nothing's as intimidating. Like, I don't know what the answer is, but I'll get there. And then there's no need to panic. There's no anxiety. There's nothing. It's just a matter of time. But it takes training to get to that point, and it's easier said than done, I suppose. It's just a mindset, a shift in your mindset that anxiety can be avoided to a large degree if I stop worrying about the answer and rather worry about my journey closer to the answer. That's my rant.
That that's really motivating. Thank you so very
It's not
much.
easy to do with kids. That once that anxiety kicks in, it's a losing battle. But it's such a simple change that if you can just see things from the right in the right way, there's no need to be anxious or worried about an answer.
If we can enjoy the journey of learning math. Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah,
very much, Professor.
no problem. So
And
yeah,
if you can give us some advice, strategic advice as being a mathematics professor, so that we can score like A plus apart from your videos, because your videos are like very valuable, worth watching them. Apart from these,
trying to understand what you were saying there. I don't know why it breaks up a lot. Um, advice in terms of success in the course.
yes,
Um, yeah, I start with the understanding the concepts, and those are very much tied to understanding the exercises. I definitely don't want to move on to any problems until all the exercises that are relevant and discussed in the videos are very well understood. That do I understand the exercises? Do I understand it to the point where I have a friend that's interested and I can explain it to them? Um, would you be able to explain that how you answer that exercise? And then once you're happy with that, you can move on to the problems, which just sort of confirms that understanding, just for a little bit extra practice. But people sometimes they rush to the problems too fast. They just want to do as many as they can, but they haven't actually stopped to check if they understand it to the point where they can explain it to someone else. Imagine you have a friend visiting, they're interested, they have a basic understanding of what you're doing. They want you to teach them how to do this exercise. So explain the answer to them. Can you do that? If you can't, then you don't really understand it. And you shouldn't move on to the problems. People rush to the volume, the quantity of questions. They just want to do as many as they can. That's We're not doing calculus here. It's not the same. I'd rather do few but have it be much better quality, uh, to the point where I can understand and explain it and talk through what I'm doing. It's very important because we are thinking of teaching, right? We want to be able to talk and explain, talk through everything we're doing. When I'm writing something down, and it'll be more obvious in the puzzles, which have more steps to them. When I'm writing something down or I'm filling in a portion of the puzzle, I need to be able to stop at any point as if someone's asking me, why are you doing that? Like the circle here. Why am I drawing the poet circle there? I need to always be able to stop and answer a why question. Why am I doing that? Am I sure I understand why that is the way it's done? And that's sort of a regular test of my understanding. Then nothing is going to be difficult or surprising if you just take the time in laying the foundation that those exercises are trying to do. There's not much challenge after that. And sometimes it takes time. Perhaps you can't do everything between the Monday Tuesday. It's a small window, but that's okay. Our pacing should give you enough time. Uh, yeah, just
thank
takes
you,
time.
Professor.
Yeah. Okay, that's the end of this session. Like I said, the nice thing with Discord is the chat's always open. Ask each other questions, or ask a general question and see who responds, or send me a message or an email, anything like that. It's an um, sort of ongoing conversation. We can't do everything in a text chat, but any little questions you might have to make sure you are doing what you should be doing, feel free to use Discord. I know some of you are new to it, but it's there to sort of get that community idea, uh, community feel. Other than that, we will continue ideally tomorrow, finishing chapter 2. Now, I know that's a lot. It could be that it's too much for some. So, if on Thursday you feel you still have questions on chapter 2, like I said, the schedule is just a rough guide. You don't have to stick to it. Later on, if you have earlier questions, you're welcome to ask them. I wouldn't worry too much about chapter 1, inductive reasoning. No, not chapter 1. Sorry, that's not right. What is chapter 1 about? Where's my index? Come on. There we go. Section 1.1, inductive reasoning, is very much an introduction. There's not a lot of questions coming out of that other than what is inductive reasoning? Can you give me an example? What are the pros and the cons? And then, actually, the whole chapter 1 is like that. Then, when we get to logical statements and negation, that's where the more interesting testable questions come from. So, chapter 1 is very much just an introduction. Do you understand the different kinds of reasoning? What's good about them? What's bad about them? That's pretty much it. And then chapter 2 is really more of a start in terms of test questions. See how far you get? Yeah. Uh, Sometimes people are a
Excuse
little
me.
bit intimidated with the first part, but it definitely does get better, so don't worry. Yes.
I have questions about the quizzes.
Yeah.
So that the quiz will, uh, I don't know how to say, so we will do it online, or you will just upload the document and we download it, do it by ourselves, and send it from email to.
Yes, I will upload it. I will post it on Discord and send it out as an email. Then you can print it out or write your answers on paper, and then you scan that in and send it back to me.
So
That
for this scan,
information, if you go to the General Math 190 SU chat under text channels,
okay,
that I have a message there. Here are the details of the tests. So
okay,
you can look
okay,
through that, and as the test gets closer, we will talk more about that. But yeah, you write your answers on paper.
okay. And so for this course, do we have the final essay need to write? Not.
So we have 4 quizzes. Quiz 1 and 2 are done at the same time on, I don't remember what it was.
Um, July
Uh,
13th.
yes. And then then you're done. You're not writing tests on those
Um,
chapters again.
so we just have 4 quizzes and
Just 4.
four and
Yes.
4 assignments.
Yes.
Okay, understand.
So it's not
Okay,
that much. Yeah.
okay. Thanks a lot. Okay.
All right. I will end it there. Hopefully you have a good rest of the day, and I guess I will see you guys, virtually see you tomorrow. Until then.